pleasure to introduce to you the man of the hour,
Tony.
Hello, and welcome back to At the Gates. I am Tony, your host, and in the background is the AC fans. I don't know if you can hear that, but they are massive, and they are just a little bit closer to the first base side, behind home plate of Tropicana Field. That's right, 3 parks, 3 days in a row. This is my last of the road trip down in wonderful St. Petersburg, Florida. This might be the sexiest episode of At the Gates, and by sexiest I just mean hottest. It is probably about 90, low 90s, but when I saw traveling down here, it looks like it was feeling like it was somewhere in the probably low to mid 100s. Harder to get much hotter than that, especially when my home stadium is Target Field. We can get a few hot days here and there, but not like this. But the good news is that it won't be the hottest game that I've gone to because climate controlled. I won't go as far as saying that I miss it at Minneapolis, but I kind of miss it. There's something nice about knowing that there's going to be a game that night, no matter the weather. And there's also some of the sentimental reasons. I mean, that was the first stadium that I ever went to. That was the only one that we've ever won world championships in. So it's sentimental. Some of the players that I looked up to the most when I was growing up and learning how to play the game, I got to see at that field, and of course got to spend a lot of those games with my dad there. So that was kind of the formative years of my baseball experience. And right now, shifting it over to Florida again, I am still just kind of wandering around the outside of the ballpark. Excuse me. It's a little bit weird pulling in. As much as you can't really tell that Atlanta has a ballpark, there is almost like a village of like shops, so you at least feel like you're somewhere. It just kind of popped up out of the middle of nowhere. A lot of residential stuff, and then since it is a semi-domed stadium, I'll call it, since it's a dome, for lack of better words, I was expecting it to stick out a lot more. I'm just used to the Metrodome and what that looked like, but this has a lower profile. I think it's set down in the ground a little bit more, and you really can't see it much from when you drive in. At least when I drove in from the north side, I really couldn't see it. Yes, it was kind of strange because I'm like, this is where Google Maps is telling me to go, but this doesn't look right. But here I am. I made it, and now I'm over by I think I'm down the line, probably closer to like right field gate 1 tickets. That's where I'm at. So I literally am at the gates, since I have gone around about halfway around the stadium. Pretty cool. And I'll probably do like I did yesterday and take some pictures as I'm recording, which I apologize, but I need to take pictures, and I don't need to, but I want to. And I'm going to do that, and I don't want to stop recording. So in the meantime, the drive itself was semi-uneventful. Really, nothing much happened. It was long and boring. I really don't enjoy having that much of Atlanta, and I also don't like that much of Florida. It's just too much for me, especially I don't. Sorry. Especially since that was really all I saw. I mean, once you get outside of Atlanta, there's really nothing to see. Even coming into Tampa, there's not much. I will go on record saying that if you're looking for any type of good drive, or whether it's good scenery or good looking skylines and towns, you're not going to get that in Florida. You might see it for a split second here and there, but for the most part, it's boring. There's a lot of it, and it's all the same. It was about 7 hours from the hotel, which was on the north side of Atlanta, and all the way down to here. Stopped and picked up a few snacks along the way, as well as, of course, had to get gas. This is really the detailed part of the description of the trip, but I have enough time. So all in all, if I didn't have to stop, maybe 20 minutes less, especially because Evie had to go to the bathroom, so that took a little bit of time. It wasn't terrible. And, I am now looking at the ground. This is kind of cool. Just to the north of Gate 1, there is a sign, there is a home plate on the ground that says Tampa Bay Devil Rays. It also says a little bit more about Wade Boggs and his 3,000 hits, but I just like seeing that it said Devil Rays. After they rebranded, they really didn't like using that term anymore. So it's cool to still see that part of their history, at least written down in some areas. I have to admit, I almost didn't show up to this game. Facing 1,600 miles back home is daunting. I'm not looking forward to it, and I let that get the best of me, and I'm not looking forward to it so much that I was contemplating not coming. That's as simple and as basic as I can explain it. The thing that actually kept me going was the fact that Trevor Plouffe is on the team. Quite honestly, if he wasn't on the team and I had no real reason to see these guys, I probably wouldn't be here. And so if you are listening, which I almost guarantee you aren't, but on the 1 in a million shot that you are, thank you for being the inspiration for me to make this journey to a new stadium. I'm sure once I take in a little bit, once I get a ball, everything will be good. But I can easily psych myself out, and I'll get a little bit serious here. Having that anxiety and that obsessive thinking really does me no good when it comes to doubting myself and letting bad things get to me. It just recycles in my mind, and the fact that I was alone. I mean, Evie was in the car with me, but I can only talk to her so much, especially because she can't talk back. So it's not much of a conversation. So the conversations basically stay in my head, and like I said, I'm really good at obsessive thinking, and so it just kind of stays like that and repeats, and I think of the worst that could happen, or not necessarily always the worst, but just the hardest parts, or I kind of dwell on the negative in my head, because that's what prevents me from doing things, which I understand why we're programmed to do that. It's self-preservation, but my brain is in a little bit higher gear of self-preservation. So that ends the serious bit. And now I'm walking past the loading dock, and it kind of smells back here. Don't really have much else to say. So I think what I will do is stop recording here and maybe pick up a little bit more later. Maybe give a road trip recap, whether that's here at Tropicana or on the way home either tonight or tomorrow. Who knows? I was going to stay the night in St. Petersburg, but kind of want to get a couple hundred miles away. So we'll see how that goes. If it's a quick enough game, I think I'm going to do that. And maybe even get close to the Georgia state line. Valdosta at the very furthest, and probably stop at no later than 2 a.m. Need to stop and get some real rest. But next time you hear me, I'll probably sound a little bit different because I'll be in a car. Bye. Hey! I am back, and I think that you'll be able to tell that I am in the car, but it is not directly after the game. In fact, it is the next night. I totally spaced out, and I've not been running on much sleep, or I've been running on very little sleep. That makes more sense. Yeah, between driving and baseball games, there really isn't much room. I was thinking about this. It's been about a total of 120 hours for this trip, from start to finish, actually a few hours under. And of those hours, 48 of them have been driving. That means that you can do the math. That's 40% of my time that I'm driving. And then 3 games, and we'll say getting to the gates early, then staying a little bit later. Games have been about 3 hours. We'll call it, we'll be on the low side and say that's 18 hours. So that means that that's about 15%. So that's 55% of my day right there, just taken up for baseball and driving. I can definitely tell you that I haven't been spending 33% of my time like I'm supposed to sleeping, because that wouldn't leave much else. That would leave me 12% of my day. It's beginning to take its toll on me. I'm a little bit bummed, kind of like I said in the last time in the first part of this episode when I was actually at the gates. I didn't know if I wanted to go down to the last game, and now I'm questioning whether I want to go to Cincinnati and Cleveland like I had thought at the end of this month. I'm still on the fence about that. I'm almost positive that I'm going to go to Milwaukee in early August, just because what's 433 miles? That's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket. It's only 25% of this drive. So I don't know. But I'm glad that I went to this last game. I didn't put up big numbers. Again, I only got 3 baseballs. So this total has been very, very low. A total of 10 balls in 3 games, which is well under my 8.18 balls per game that I was carrying before this road trip. Now it's probably down to 7.5, maybe a little bit lower. But there was no BP again, and things were very, very dead for a while. I'm glad that I brought the big glove, because that stood out a little bit again. And Jesus Sucre took the glove and was playing with it on the bench for the first 3 innings. He had it a few minutes before game time, and there was a game ball that he had that he was just kind of throwing back and forth in his glove. And at one point, I kind of asked him if I would be able to get a ball later, and he nodded. So that's cool. Didn't know what I was going to get the glove back, but like I said, he had it for 3 innings, and then when he tossed it back, there was that nice game ball right inside the pocket, and that was my third and final ball of that game and this road trip. But the biggest news came with when I saw Trevor Plouffe for the first time in a Rays uniform. He came out shortly before the national anthem and was DH that night. Unfortunately, he went 0 for 3 and was pinch hit for in the 8th inning, I believe. So that was the unfortunate part. But the cool part was he came over, talked to me for a little bit, and I just kind of asked him how it was going. He said that he enjoyed his new home much better in Tampa than in Oakland. Sounds like he's a better fit for Tampa, and Tampa is a better fit for him. So I'm hoping that he's more of a utility role right now for them and more of a pinch hitter, but hopefully he can kind of build that stock back up, and being the backup to Evan Longoria isn't necessarily a bad thing. Learn a little bit more about third base, and Evan has had a history where sometimes he does get injury prone, and if that happens, Plouffe can step right in and take that role. Likewise, I think that it would make sense for him to also be the backup for first base, which I believe he is. And then like I witnessed, DH. I don't know if he has been practicing in outfield at all. I know that he could early on. I think that was 2012 when I went down to spring training, was when he kind of turned into that super utility role where they didn't know where they were going to put him, but they wanted him in the field somewhere. So I've seen it in spring training. I don't know if he can still do it. I mean, he is, not that he's old, but he is older in baseball years, and he's built much more for third base, which makes sense because he was there for a good 4 or 5 years. But that leads me to something cool that happened a little bit later. So after he came out and said hello, right at the end he said that later on he would try to get a ball for me, which I was like, sweet, thanks, that's awesome. And so when he came out a little bit later, I think it was again before the national anthem, or maybe it was like right after, but typically in the time that players warm up and throw the ball around a little right before the game, he comes out with a glove, which I thought was strange because he was DHing that night. But I thought, well, maybe he's warming up one of the other guys. Sometimes I see that happening with the Twins, so maybe they're going to throw it right in front of the dugout, and he was going to need a glove for that. But he comes walking over to me, and I was thinking, oh, is he going to throw a ball? It doesn't look like he has one. And then he kind of looks at his glove, which was on his hand, and then takes it off, and he goes, here, I want you to have this. And at that point, I was kind of in shock, and it was pretty amazing. Very surreal. So I was like, are you sure? Like, and he goes, yeah, you've been a fan for such a long time. I appreciate it. And that was really, really cool. And then not only was that cool, but to hear the story behind the glove was, I think, the coolest part. he showed it to me right away, and it said on the thumb, where usually players have their name embroidered, instead of saying Trevor Plouffe, it said Mike Moustakas, which I had seen Trevor using that glove before, and just I could tell by the style that it was obviously his, Trevor's, I should say. But I also knew that he was pretty tight with Moustakas, and I'm pretty sure that I was aware that he was using his glove. But then he spilled a little bit more of the info and said that when he got the move to third base with the Twins early on in his career, he didn't have a glove for it, because before that he was shortstop, which they're probably going to use a little bit shorter of a glove. And then also in spring training they tried to put him in outfield, which would be a much bigger glove, but he didn't have a third baseman's mitt. So when he was switched over to third base, since he didn't have one, and Moustakas was his buddy, Moose gave him one of his gloves, and Trevor used it for a while, and this thing, not only does it look broken in, it looks like it was absolutely beat up and used for quite a long time, which is really, really cool. Another cool thing about it is in the webbing on the back, there is an American flag that I believe it's probably like a sticker, and I have a sticker that looks very similar to that, if not the same type, that I got from a couple 4th of Julys ago from Dominic, the bat boy for the Twins, which would make sense if Trevor took one of those and stuck it on the back, but it's hanging on by a thread. But I also remember that because in some of the photos that were taken of his glove before some of the games, Brace, the photographer for the Twins, really liked to zoom in and show that, along with like Trevor's hat and sunglasses or whatever. But I specifically remember that American flag on the back. So now I'm going to have to go back and dig through some of the photographs from early on in his days and see if I can kind of photo match that glove and just see what kind of timeline that thing has. It's really awesome. It's kind of a holy grail to get a glove from a player, because that's a very close and personal and prized possession to them. Not many people just willingly give up the glove that they broke in, that they feel the most comfortable with. I'm sure that the pros go through a few of them and use them a lot more and go through them quicker than regular folks, but there's still a lot of guys that kind of treat it's probably the closest to a baby that they have that is part of their uniform. The rest of it kind of gets pieces partsed out by the team, and they can sell it. But as far as gloves go, that's property of that player, and some of them really try to stick to one glove or very, very few gloves in their career. So I am honored to have it. I am excited to have that, and I am still in a bit of shock. It's pretty cool. I don't know if he's going to sign with the Rays again, or if even if the Rays are going to offer him another contract. But whoever he's playing for next year, when I go see him, I kind of want to bring that glove and catch a ball with it, and it would be really cool if it was from him, just because it feels like it would complete some type of weird cycle, like it kind of came full circle for some reason. I'm not going to use it like at other games and other times, but I think that's the one exception that I would make is when he comes back in town and when he's nearby, have that glove on the ready, whether it's him taking BP or wherever he is close enough to that for any type of toss-up should he toss up any balls. So that completes that story, and like I said, 4 balls the first game in Bush, then 3 balls in SunTrust, and 3 balls at Tropicana. Not the best road trip for me, but you factor in a glove, and above all else, just taking in the new experience and being able to have these type of stories, as well as getting closer to some really cool dudes that also chase after baseballs, and also some of the other friends that were kind of one-time friends, disposable friends, if you will. Some of the people that I met just at the stadium, either workers or people that I sat by that I talked to for a while, there were a lot of cool people, including the photographer from the Rays that I talked to for a few innings when he was right by me taking pictures. He seemed like a really cool guy. Got to hear some of the stories of his days working with the Rays, and I think the other coolest part was, it's unfortunate that it was this quick, but talking to David and hanging out with him for the amount of time that I did was not only enjoyable, but made me want to try to make sure that I can have a longer series next time when I go down to see him, or when we plan something together, because it was way too quick, it was way too short, and I didn't spend nearly enough time as what I wanted to or should have with him. So thank you, David. Also thank you to Doug, because he we kind of followed each other on this trip. He was at the Atlanta game as well as the Tampa game. I think he was also still down in Tampa today and through this weekend. But it's kind of cool to cross paths with some of these guys, especially kind of cool with Doug, because we've met at 3 different stadiums this year, and all 3 are very far away from my house, at least. So it's cool. I like that aspect of being on the road and making those new friends, or solidifying some of those younger friendships that you have. Overall, it was good. Going back to the ball count, I will add a disclaimer that 10 is somewhat low, but those stadiums are tougher. Tropicana, not so much, but any stadium when you don't have BP, like I had for 2 of the games, that the Bush and Tropicana had no BP. Anytime you have no BP, that's tough, and I think if you go home with 2 in a game with no BP, you're winning. So I exceeded that, so I can't complain. Then Atlanta, David will back me up, and I can confirm what he has been saying for a while, and that is Atlanta is ridiculously hard, especially compared to what the old stadium was. It might just be one of the hardest in the league right now. I don't know if that's going to change over time. I'm guessing that the lower attendance is going to help, but the design, that's not getting better anytime soon. It's not very conducive to getting baseballs, so even if attendance is super low, you're still probably not going to have a very high output, especially for new people to the stadium. And the other part, my rambling on, the other part about the 3 in Atlanta, not only is that somewhat respectable just for Atlanta standards, but there was maybe a half an hour of BP, and that's being quite generous with my time. It was probably even under that. You got a brief portion of the Braves, and then about one round of the Astros actually took BP. Just maybe 2 or 3 guys came out and hit some balls. No one was in the outfield. There was a handful of coaches / actually Braves employees, like the ball boys and stuff. So they weren't really tossing much up anyways. So it was slim pickings for BP this road trip, which is unfortunate because I would like to get to see exactly what each stadium is like at its fullest potential for ball hawking, but to be able to cross off a few more stadiums from the list is never a bad thing. So I think that's where we're going to leave it. I should say last night after the game, I ended up taking off and going all the way up to Gainesville. So shaved off maybe about 10% of the trip back that I was supposed to have. And then I pulled in, I want to say around 1:30 or so. After I took a shower and stuff, it was 2-something, and then I set the alarm for 6:45 and 7:15, but here's where it gets very detailed and very graphic, so if you don't want to hear a really nasty story about my dog, have a good day, and you can end it here. Okay, for those left, my dog has problems with her anal glands, which they don't express themselves. Dogs secrete oils. It's part of how they mark their territory, and part of it goes basically into their poop every time, so that's how they can tell whose poop that is. But hers don't naturally, or they don't on their own release that oil, so that oil just kind of stays in that gland and builds up over time and can kind of express themselves. And normally when they express themselves, like with each number 2, they just do a very little amount, but when it clogs and then expresses itself, it's not a little amount. The other danger with that is if they don't express, they can rupture, and that's really bad because anything rupturing is generally a bad thing. But she has been known to, if I don't get them expressed at the doctors, at the vets, she has been known to sometimes express herself. Earlier on the trip when I was in Atlanta, I had to stop before I got to David's place in the morning because she wasn't eating, and usually that's a sign that she needs to get them expressed. And I got them expressed at a Banfield. So shout out to Banfield, you are the unofficial sponsor. Banfield Pet Hospitals. They are part of many PetSmarts, so find them, and if you are a member, you can go anywhere in the country, which is very helpful, at least in this scenario. Anyways, got them expressed, thinking, great, life is good, she's back to normal. She was eating again, everything seemed good, but I think maybe the stress of the car ride, she didn't stop eating, but 2 days later, like I said, when I woke up at 6:30 a.m. this morning now, can't keep my days straight, that's Friday morning for you keeping track at home, got them, so I should go back, I got them expressed, actually, what would that be? Yep, Wednesday morning. So this Friday morning, I wake up to a dog licking herself, and she is flipped compared to what I had put her to bed like. Usually she does snuggle up with me because she's a baby and because I don't mind. But usually her head is up by my head and she kind of sleeps her side up against me and things are good. But I wake up and her butt is closer to like where my armpit is, and she is licking herself, and I try to kind of swat her away from licking herself, and I was like, stop it. And then as soon as I woke up a little bit more when I tried to do that, I got that whiff. And if you have ever smelled the smell of a dog expressing themselves, their anal gland expressions, you will know exactly what I mean. It's terrible. It smells like rotten fish, but much more condensed. It's absolutely disgusting. The first time that she had it when she was a puppy and we didn't know what to do, it was all over in her kennel, or so we thought. It was just a small area and all on her breath is what it ended up being. But it was god-awful. I thought the dog was broken and that she was dying. So I woke up to that this morning. So yeah, instead of waking up, that's the long-winded story of go to sleep at 2-something and then wake up and at 6:30 when you should have gotten up at maybe 7:15 after the second alarm. So I'm not running on much sleep. That's also why I'm rambling. So this is probably the longest episode, and actually the longest portion of any episode is this non-At the Gates portion of At the Gates. I'll let you go, because I have to look at the map. Good night. Have fun. Catch baseballs. Goodbye.